Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a comedy movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Uncle Buck today. So this is a John Hughes movie and starring John Candy. Now Uncle Buck is a 40-year-old bachelor who has never really had any responsibility, doesn't have a job, doesn't have any sort of kids or a wife or anything like that. Pretty much been living his life as a sort of gambler really, and that's kind of how he makes his money. But he gets a call one night from his brother and was asked to babysit their 3 kids when his sister-in-law, well, her father has kind of had a heart attack and they have to sort of go out of town to sort of go and look after him. And they asked Uncle Buck after no one else will actually be willing to help them, as a last resort, to come and watch the kids for a sort of indeterminate amount of time. Now, Uncle Buck's sort of sister-in-law doesn't really kind of trust him, but ultimately there's no one else. So he kind of goes there in the middle of the night, and he sort of hasn't seen the kids in a long time. He's not really sure, you know, how old they are, and I think the 2 younger ones, I'm not sure if he's even seen since they were probably born or anything like that. And so what you have here is kind of a fish out of water story where you've got John Candy's character trying to sort of look after these kids, and you've got the main one really is their sort of 15-year-old rebellious daughter called Tia, and she's having a very sort of difficult time with her actual parents, and they sort of seem a little bit out of touch. And you've got John Candy coming in, who doesn't have any real sort of parenting experience, but maybe sees things from a different point of view. And throughout the course of the film, and some hilarious set pieces, actually kind of manages to almost get these kids sort of back on track and sort of and defend them, and kind of have the point of view from someone who maybe isn't quite as close to them like the parents, and sort of build these bridges because he's coming in as an outsider. So that's really the plot of the film. On top of that, you've got John Candy's sort of girlfriend at the time, a woman called Chanice, who's kind of, they've been sort of seeing each other for a long time, and she's trying to get him on the straight and narrow, and he's kind of resisting it. And then what you really have, ultimately, the film comes down to a battle of wills between Uncle Buck, played by John Candy, and Tia, the 15-year-old sort of older daughter, who's kind of going through her, so I say, her sort of rebellious sort of phase, and she's dating this kind of typical sort of sex-crazed boy called Bug. And it's, you know, Uncle Buck kind of sees through all the sort of BS. So you know, John Hughes makes some great comedy films. It's very much in that sort of style of the sort of typical John Hughes mould. It's very fun. It's very charming. It's not a particularly offensive film to anyone. It's I will say this. It's one of the things that maybe, if I had to pick holes in this film, the character Tia, she's made out to be a real bitch in this. I mean, okay, she's a rebellious 15-year-old girl. They're gonna be pushing back, but throughout the sort of 90% of this movie, she's particularly sort of unpleasant. And then she has a sort of like a degree of redemption towards the end, where she kind of sort of comes to terms with that maybe she was, like, you know, wrong in her approach and things like that. But I would say it's maybe not quite as, doesn't go quite as far as I would have liked in regards to that. I thought that Tia was such a kind of she played it well. I have to say that I'm not criticising the actual performance. It does, because it really does make you feel, God, she's a right cow, this Tia. But to me, I still kind of didn't really like her character at the end of the movie, because she played such a bitch throughout the whole film, which does have this kind of redemptive last portion of the film. It didn't feel quite enough to me, but there you go. But that's only a really minor criticism. You've got the 2 younger kids who are charming, one played by Macaulay Culkin, and they kind of like get to you know, get to grips with Buck very quickly, and he seems to sort of get on with them a lot better than he does with Tia. And some funny scenes involving Buck's sort of meetings with, for example, their sort of assistant principal, who's this kind of very uptight sort of teacher with a huge mole on her chin. And also there's some quite funny exchanges with Buck and Bug, who is the boyfriend of Tia, and Buck sort of sees right through that he's just obviously just sort of after sex, and kind of feels like he has to sort of intervene. And there's some great funny scenes. It is, I mean, this film is obviously, it's an older film now. So some of the comedy elements maybe not as funny these days as when you could have watched them when it was first released. But a lot of the comedy is still funny to this day and age. And I personally, I mean, I do like John Candy. He hasn't done loads of films, but this is probably my favourite film of John Candy's, to be honest with you. I think, the Uncle Buck character is fantastic. I love him. Such a great character. So I'm going to give this film an 8.5 out of 10. I think this is one of the best John Hughes, maybe underrated John Hughes comedies that you've seen out there. I think this one maybe gets forgotten about to a certain degree. Anyway, let me know, what's your favourite John Hughes comedy? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.